Today we're off to Mönchengladbach in western Germany. For almost 200 years, the mighty brewery Hensen brewed beer here before closing in the 1970s. 4 decades later, 3 friends brought the brewery back to life. Today they make a combination of traditional German beers and modern brow handwork. Welcome to No Pants During the Pandemic. Hi, I'm Kevin Brooks, and this is No Pants During the Pandemic. Today I'm speaking with Jonas Rödig from Brewery Hensen, a small brewery in Germany. Hey Jonas, how you doing?
I'm pretty fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's just jump right into things. Why don't you tell me who you are and a little bit about yourself?
I'm Jonas, last name Rödig. I'm one of the owners of the Hensen Brauerei from Mönchengladbach.
As you just said, the brewery is located in Mönchengladbach. What's the city like?
It's more like smaller city, and like if you grow up there, you've got your home base and probably get into the city. I don't get into the city, but that probably has also the reason because like in the last 10 years, pubs closed down and everything more like turned to like Düsseldorf and Cologne. But they've got a big football club, or maybe how you call it, soccer. That's probably like the most famous thing coming out of Mönchengladbach is Borussia Mönchengladbach.
And the city is located between Düsseldorf and Aachen?
Yeah, it's like totally like Western Germany. Some call it East Netherlands because some people are like, they sound like they speak Dutch sometimes.
Hensen's Brauerei has a long history. Could you tell me a little bit about it?
It used to be one of the actually biggest breweries in the area. It was probably founded around 1793. That's actually what the books say. And it lasted till like the early 70s. In the 70s, lots of breweries died out in Germany, as the Hensen Brauerei. Yeah, it was actually closed the whole time, but the parts of the old building remained. And I think in the early 80s, there was like restaurants and pubs opening in the old brew house. And then in 2017, we put a new brewery in the old brew house.
What was the building like when, I guess it was in good shape. You weren't, it wasn't a shell of a building.
It's a really cool building because you've got like brewing tradition in there. If you're actually a brewer and you walk in there, you can imagine where the kettles and stuff were standing. And like you've got all these old metal stairs up there, and it's really interesting to see.
Do you have like old photos, from like the early 1900s and whatnot?
Yeah, but you can't find too much of it. Actually, it's kind of weird because this brewery has been that big, but you can't really find much about it. If you talk to old people, some people heard of it, and like maybe some worked there during their university time, just filling up bottles and stuff.
Interesting. Now, is there a beer scene in Mönchengladbach?
It just like turned from altbier to pils somehow, I would say. We actually got like close to Mönchengladbach. There's a Bolton brewery, claims to be the oldest altbier brewery in the world. And we got the Oettinger Brauerei, what's the biggest brewery in Germany. It used to be the Hann brewery there, also an altbier brewery, but nevertheless, it's just, there was no beer scene, I would say.
Okay. What's your background in the beer industry?
Around 2006, I did like an apprenticeship, it's called. 3 years at the Oettinger Brauerei. It's also in Mönchengladbach. Used to be the Hann brewery, and it's like 3 years of learning how to brew. Then once you've done that and did the test and stuff, you can call yourself a brewer. After that, I've been like working a couple of years as a brewer. At the last brewery I worked at, I met Patrick, who I'm doing like the brewery now with. After that, I went to like brewmaster school at Dömens in Munich.
You mentioned, brewmaster, and, here in the United States, and I know in England and a few other countries, basically anybody who brews will call themselves a brewmaster. But I mean, it's a title, and you have to earn that title.
Yeah, definitely. You have to do like the first 3 years to get a brewer, and then you can become brewmaster. It's like 1 year of total brain fuck school, I would say.
Okay.
With this title, you're actually like allowed in Germany to work at bigger breweries, being the chief brewer or run the laboratory or actually run breweries. It's really deep down in everything, you know. But actually, some things I've learned there, I would now say, okay, why did I learn those things, but not learn other things? But that's too long of a story. Actually, sometimes it's like kind of weird, like everybody calls themselves a brewer or a brewmaster, and I would say, like, oh, there's way more to it than just put out a beer. It takes some time and some work.
Yeah. And when you guys started, Patrick actually was a journeyman, right?
He's just a brewer. So
Okay.
he only did like the 3 years and then worked. He's been working in breweries for like 20 years, I think.
Wow.
But he didn't do like the brewmaster's class.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was at brewmaster's class, he called me and was saying like, what do you want to do after that? I've got an idea and I've got the place and I've got a brewery.
What made you, Patrick, and Norbert want to open a brewery?
Norbert, who's actually Patrick's uncle, he bought the building in the late 80s. And he always had like the dream of putting up a new brewery in it. Once Patrick became a brewer, he always was just like asking him, you want to do a brewery in there? And he was always like, oh, I don't want to do it alone. So he called me and asked me if I would do it with him.
Were the Hensens, was that the family?
Yes, it was actually two brothers back in the day. Because it was the old Hensen Brewery building. Once we opened up the brewery, we're thinking about how we're going to call it. And it didn't take long until we decided, why don't we take the old name? It wouldn't fit to have like a funky name for being in this old building. And we took parts of the old logos and stuff and redone it. I'm pretty happy with that. Like finding like a mixture out of tradition and modern stuff.
Have you spoken to any of the Hensen family that's still around?
Nope, you can't find anyone.
Really?
Yeah, no one. It's kind of weird.
Did you have to legally deal with getting the name?
It was too old.
Oh, good.
The rights were all gone. Yeah.
Excellent. I could see that being a big pain in the ass. You guys are brewing several traditional beers. Could you, walk me through a few of those?
We've got like 3 types of beer we always have. That's like our Pilsner and our old beer and IPA. We started out with those. And we're actually like a really small brewery. So we always have like in between 1, 2, 3 special beers.
Why brew a Pils and an altbier?
Because it's such a small town, you have to have a Pilsner. I've never wanted to do a Pilsner, but people ask for it in our area. And then we did an altbier because it's an altbier region. And me and Patrick are both altbier drinkers. It's like my favorite type of beer, my favorite beer style. So that's actually the first beer we brewed.
Just for people who may not know, could you tell me what an altbier is and its relationship with the Düsseldorf area?
Yeah, an altbier is a top fermented beer. So actually an ale, but a darker ale it is. In the beginning was like really bitter. Like if you have like Uriger Alt from Düsseldorf, it's really bitter. It has a light dark color. So like our alt beer is actually it's even lighter because we put in the chocolate malt after the normal mashing process. So we don't have like this coffee and roasty taste. You just get the color and have like a really light version of an alt beer.
Is an altbier like a Kolsch that it can really only be made in that area technically?
No, that's the problem. the altbier breweries didn't take that advantage that than the Kölsch beer breweries did.
Unlike most of your brewing brethren there in Germany, you've delved into what we call craft beer. So you're not just making lagers. Obviously, you're making the IPA, even though that is a traditional style, but just a traditional English style. But you've delved into, the bigger and bolder, I guess, American-influenced styles as well.
Like I said earlier, it's just like these three main beers, and then we have different beers coming up. Like we did a coffee stout that we release once a year. We did an Rauchbier, like smoke beer, but that was just everybody was doing New England IPAs. I was just like, I want to do like an old German style again. So we released like a smoke beer, but like a really light version of it. At the moment, we have a Wiener Lager laying there. It's always different stuff. We did a double dry hop, double IPA like just a month ago. We did an Old England IPA. So it's just like basically a New England IPA, but on an old beer base.
So it's got a stronger malt backbone?
Yeah, and it's just like, it doesn't look that tasty because like you've got it like all this hazy and creamy stuff, but in brown. So
you've also made a beer with our common friend Sebastian.
We did two beers. We started out in a series of beers. We already released two. First was what do you call it in English? Roggen.
Well, Roggen.
Roggen, yeah. Roggen Pale Ale. And it's called Rhein Derby because we're all close to the river Rhine, and Derby like from football. Okay. Like if a town is playing the town to the next town to each other, so it's called Derby. And the last one was like a micro IPA. I don't know if we're doing one this year again, but probably.
Now I've heard you really don't like the term craft beer, and you don't call your beer that.
We call it Brauhandwerk. Handwerk. I don't know like the exact term in English. A guy doing like metal work or building houses. How would you call this like main section of it?
Like manual labor, handmade.
Yeah, like handmade brewing stuff. We just want to call it this way because we also got like in Germany like new breweries coming up and people releasing beer, but and calling craft beer. To my opinion, it's just like we've got a German term for it, so why don't we call it that way? And to me, like the term craft beer is, I don't really like the term craft beer. I've been to the US so many times, like a couple of times, and you've got this really big breweries calling themselves craft beer, and I think you're bigger than 90% of the breweries in Europe, and you call yourself craft, like crafted by hand. So I don't get the point behind that.
I agree. So how were your handmade beers received in your community?
I would say good. That's the reason we're still here. It was just like actually like the altbier was just like people really like the altbier. If you like compare it, I would say like 30 years ago, you like in our area you had like 70% altbier to 30% pilsner beer. And nowadays in normal like pubs you have like 10% altbier and 90% pilsner. So when we release the altbier, we have on 50-50 in the brewery. So actually, like if you just take like these two beers, you have 50 altbier and 50 pilsner beer, and like you have like also these people I was telling earlier who have never heard of like IPAs or like hoppy beers, and now they're like totally into it. We actually got like a couple of guys coming there, like old guys coming every day and just having like one IPA and then going home.
That's great.
Can I have another of these IPA?
It's perfect. Now, where are you selling most of your beer at?
Usually at the brew house. That used to be like, I would say 80% of the beer we sold there. The other 20% selling around the corner or like craft beer stores actually.
But mainly in the Düsseldorf area?
Yeah, mostly. But We've done a couple of events in the whole of Germany, but more likely just to hang out and have fun. And we sold to other stores there. And then we had stores asking, how do I get to the beer? And we're just like, okay, we're not coming every time. So that's like a movement in between like starting and then deciding, okay, it's way better to just serve the area around 100 kilometers around the corner and just do some events just like to have fun, you know. We started doing another thing with like two breweries, like friends of ours, that were now starting to sell beer like Germany wide, doing like whole cases. Like people have to order, like shops, craft beer shops have to order like 20 cases, and you can like order 5 of ours, 5 from Mücke, 10 from Brauprojekt. So we're getting more out of our area now.
How large is the brewery?
It's a 3 hectoliter brew house, actually. I would say we're doing 4 hecto a month, 4,000 liters a month. Like last year, we did, I think, 400 hectoliters. But it's like every year's, I think, always like 50 to 100 hectoliters more.
You guys have a restaurant on site. What's the restaurant like?
You can probably compare it to like American brew house food, I would say. Like you don't have like Wiener Schnitzel there. You more likely have like ribs or beef on fries. But you have some Asian stuff too, like bowls, and it's more like a modern version of a brew house. When they first started having the restaurant, you had like old people coming there who were just like walking out because they didn't have Wiener Schnitzel, but on the other hand, you had like people coming in just like for the new food, you know.
Well, what's the point of having Wiener Schnitzel when 5 restaurants down the block have Wiener Schnitzel?
That's the reason. Like they were thinking like, oh, it's a brew house restaurant. You have to have Haxe and stuff. Then I would say just go to Cologne or go to Düsseldorf if you want to, but we've got a different version of it. There you can only have one beer. You can have like 6 different beers and other food, you know?
Exactly. You guys have a small beer garden too, right?
We've got a beer garden. It's not a typical beer garden like you can imagine like from Bavaria, but we've got like a big terrace outside of the brewery. It's just like, I think, 50 to 60 tables. But it's closed right now.
We'll turn here to COVID because, well, we can't have one of these episodes without it.
What is COVID?
Exactly. I've never heard of this COVID.
Never heard of it.
When mid-March of last year came around and everything shut down, what was going through your mind?
I was actually still planning to do our 3 years anniversary. I was asking other breweries to have like a stand and a beer garden of ours, and I was like talking to Ollie from Sudden Death, and he was just like, why do you think this you can still do that in May? And I was just like, don't worry, it's just a fever, like it's going over. And then just like, so okay, I already ordered glasses, and then like 2 weeks after that I called the company and was just like, I don't think we're going to do this year.
Hopefully they didn't have dates on them.
Yeah. Yeah, but then it like went pretty fast. At first I was just thinking, okay, no more festivals for the next couple of months. And then they closed down the bar and the restaurant. So it's a weird time. Then in the summer we were actually getting back to normal, and beer garden and restaurant reopened, and it seemed like nothing happened besides that like festivals were not allowed to do. But from October on last year, it's been like already like half a year. Like that's the hardest part of it, because like there's nothing going on, and you can't even like imagine like if there is something to do in the summer. Probably not.
So how are you guys getting your beer out now?
Everything in bottle. And we actually have a couple of guys who like order kegs. We actually got that one guy who has a 30-liter keg every week. And I was like, okay, what is he doing at home?
Well, you know what he's doing at home.
Yeah, and every time his wife is driving him.
Well, of course she is. He's drunk.
The market has changed definitely. I would say, like, if everything's reopening, I hope that the guys who came to us in between like the lockdown and started like drinking our beer at home are still staying on it, saying, okay, I don't go to the supermarket and buy a case of beer for $10. I will stay with the $50 for a case of beer, you know?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to be said for, you know who actually made your beer.
We're doing like, we've got like a 1 bottle filler. So we do 100 bottles an hour. So compared to like big breweries, you're doing like 60,000 an hour. So it's like way more work for way less money.
Well, that's a big thing, you know, across the board. There's a lot of breweries who have kept their numbers, their how much they've made during the past year plus about as close as you could want, but because everything's going into packaged into cans or bottles,
it's way more
it's a
expensive.
lot less money.
Like
yeah,
we did a lot of like online shop. Like the online shop was going crazy, especially like in March last year. But it's also like packaging and stuff. I would say like before that we only had like 3 or 4 orders in the online shop a month, but now it's just 4 to 20 a week. So that's kind of cool to see that.
To me, much like England, Germany, you don't drink your beer at home traditionally. It's like you would go out to the bar or the beer garden and drink. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to put your psychologist hat on. How's this affecting, like the German people being more or less not have the option to go to do these things?
They actually drink more at home. That's like what's actually good for us. So they buy beer at our place, but I would say everybody is like getting more fucked off. Like it's crazy. Like not seeing friends, not hanging out, not going to a beer garden. That's just like, and getting closer to the summer, it's even worse.
Has there been any, word as to when everything will be able to open back up yet?
It changes every week. So that's the reason I don't even look at the news anymore, because like it was to reopen and like first time in January, and so they're meeting up like every 2 or 3 weeks, and it always just like goes on to everything stays the same till this and that time. So from now on, I just take it and don't even care if they reopen. If anything is allowed to reopen, you probably can hear it from everywhere. So
So if there was no COVID, wishful thinking, what was next for Hensen's?
we actually want to get like a bigger filler, so we could do more beer. We're still like in the growing process, like we started in 2017. We wanted to do the anniversary festival, but now we're just like trying to get along, trying to survive, and we'll see what's next. And I hope
Understood.
we can do like the anniversary after this shit is over, and then even do it way bigger.
Excellent. Well, Jonas, thanks so much for chatting with me. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and I wish you the best of luck getting through this and in the future.
Yeah, I really liked it. It was fun.
I'm glad you liked it. I'll talk to you soon. If you'd like to learn more about Brewery Hensen, you can check out their website. The link's in the video's description. And if you like this or any of the other episodes of No Pants During the Pandemic, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.